going on, y'all? Happy Saturday. We back at it again. Another edition of Gen Sports Corner. Before we get into the video, make sure you like, subscribe, click the notification bell so you know every time I drop a video. Share the word, you know what I mean? We're going to get right into it. First and foremost, we just had a very, very, very epic show at the IPA Music Festival at Love Brewery Company over in Philadelphia. If you didn't get a chance to attend, it's alright. We're going to have footage up and, you know what I mean, more events to come. But let's get into this fight tonight. Big fight, 175-pound matchup to be the unified world champion between Artur Beterbiev and Joe Smith Jr., the Common Man. The Common Man versus the Beast, the Punisher, the Destroyer. Let's talk about it here, man. Let's get right into the stats. Artur Beterbiev, 37 years old, 17-0, all 17 wins by knockout. Insane, 100% KO ratio. 5'11.5 inches tall, 73-inch reach. Fights orthodox. He currently has the WBC and the IBF straps. And Joe Smith Jr., 32 years old. He is 28-3 with 22 KOs. A very, very good knockout percentage. He is 6 foot, just a little bit taller than Beterbiev by half an inch, with a 76-inch reach, so he has a 3-inch reach advantage. He also fights orthodox, and he has the WBO belt. The notable wins that Joe Smith Jr. has is against Fonfara about 7 years ago. That was a big win. Fonfara was a really solid fighter. Got a TKO knockout victory over Fonfara. Lost against Bivol, unanimous decision in March of 2019. Got his WBO belt from Jesse Hart in 2020 in January by split decision. And then had a very big knockout victory over Eliter Alvarez during the lockdown in August of 2020. So he's been very active, and let's be honest, man, with every fight, he's looked better and better and better. On the flip side, you look at Beterbiev, again, all 17 wins by knockout, but his notable wins are the big one over Alexander Vostik, by knockout. He stopped him, I think it was the 10th round of that fight in 2019, and that was big because Vostik, so Beterbiev had the IBF strap, and he got the WBC belt from Vostik, who was, I believe, he might have been 17-0 himself at that point. But he was undefeated, very, very good fighter, technically sound, just dude was nasty. He was able to stop him. So that was crazy because he really just kind of wore him down over the course of the fight. And we're going to talk about that being a recurring theme in all of his fights. And then his latest victory of note was in December of last year, December 17th, 2021, with a knockout stoppage victory over Marcus Brown. I think that might have been the 9th round or something like that. And Marcus Brown could not continue. Marcus Brown busted Beterbiev's face up early in the fight. I don't know how it happened, by punch or headbutt or whatever the case may be, but Beterbiev was busted up from the 3rd round on, but he still applied pressure and just systematically broke Marcus Brown down. And Marcus Brown just really, he emptied the gas tank out, and he didn't have anything else. So that was very impressive. And Marcus Brown was in the Olympics on a very good 2012 Olympic squad for boxing for the U.S., if I'm not mistaken. So, and Beterbiev being a 2-time Olympian himself, that's very impressive to be able to have that type of performance on a big stage and in the professional ranks against another former Olympian. So let's look at the matchup of this fight. Joe Smith Jr. being really the Common Man, that nickname fits him, and that was really etched in the stone in that fight against Bernard Hopkins way back, if you guys remember, the one where that was Bernard Hopkins' last fight, and he said, "I'm a special man. I am a special man. Special man," and then pointed to him and said, "Common Man." Special Man pointed to Joe Smith Jr. and then said, "Common Man. Which one you want to be?" And guess what? Joe Smith Jr. ended up knocking Uncle Bernard out the ring and really catapulted himself into a position where he was able to get some bigger fights. Now, obviously, that's an older Bernard Hopkins, but you get the point. He really didn't take it too personally, and he went in there and did his job just like a blue-collar worker. Pick up the shovel, go right back to work. Doesn't even care about none of the noise, none of the talk or the nonsense. He's just really there just to knock people out the ring. And I love that about him. Now, he's really a big puncher. Swings wild, swings wide. But one thing that I've noticed about him in his fights is I've noticed improvement. So I think I was looking at the fight with him against, let's see, it wasn't Jesse Hart. Let's go ahead and look at the fight that I was just looking at between him and, wasn't Sullivan Barrera. It might have been Maxime Vlasov, and that was the fight where he earned his WBO belt. And in that fight against Vlasov, he was not really, he didn't really look that sharp. He just didn't really look that sharp. He looked like he was swinging wild and just really throwing looping slow punches, loading up on punches, versus some of his other fights. You see different versions of Joe Smith Jr. In some of his earlier fights, he looked very slow, methodical, plodding, and then in some of his recent fights, it looks like he's just added more tools to his repertoire. In some instances, you'll see him throw chain punches of 1, 2, 3, 4 straight punches, almost like what you see reminiscent in a style like Wing Chun, where you're just throwing chain punches down the center line. Like you're not really loading up for power. You're just throwing punches down the center line in rapid succession without telegraphing your punches. This coming from a power puncher, and then he'll switch it up within the round and then go from that to going to sweeping hooks and uppercuts. So like the variation is just extremely impressive. And I just didn't notice that about him, and I even underrated him from that aspect. And it's opened my eyes going back and looking at some of his more recent highlights. Now you flip and look at Beterbiev. Beterbiev, built like a tank, kind of reminds me of Khabib from the UFC. Like he's just built sturdy, right? Especially for a boxer. You look at his upper body and it's almost like if he takes a punch, it's almost like he just absorbs it. And then at the same time, he applies pressure on you, and he's very technically sound. For somebody that looks that jacked, you wouldn't expect him to be technically sound, but he is. Very, very good jab, a sharp jab. And he really varies up the combinations, the speed, the pace, the frequency at which he's throwing those punches, goes upstairs, goes downstairs, comes around the guard with the hook if you have that high guard. He's just very, very technically sound. He's calculated in his decisions, and he applies constant pressure. He will not allow you to get a breath. And that's how he gets his knockouts. He has the power too, don't get me wrong. But he just applies pressure and just does not allow you anywhere to run to physically or mentally either. More importantly, he applies that mental pressure round after round after round until you start getting a little weary. And he's the type of guy, when he smells blood in the water, game over, right? So that's the reason why he has a 100% knockout rate, whether it's low-level competition or high-level competition like Vostik or Marcus Brown. So, just highly impressed with what I saw out of Beterbiev. I was aware of him back in 2017, 2018, when Beterbiev and Shabransky and Dmitry Bivol were all up and coming. We didn't really know about them, but I heard about them through the grapevine from different boxing channels. So I was very aware of these guys. Shabransky, he's a guy that's very big as well, but he's not technically sound like a Beterbiev or especially a Bivol. Like, they are just tacticians. Like Shabransky, he wasn't able to have the longevity as a Beterbiev because he doesn't have the technical skill. He would just get hit too much, even though he was very big. Eventually, it's going to catch up to you. Whereas Beterbiev, he's very big, but he doesn't get hit clean a whole lot. Like, you'll get him here and there, but he's not in there to take punches. He's in there to punish you. In the same mode as like a Triple G. Triple G, he took some punches here and there, yeah, sure. But he dealt out punishment before you could even get a chance to respond. Rapid fire in succession. So those are the style matchups. So you have a brawler who can box at times in Joe Smith Jr., who has a good jab, against a very powerful puncher who is a very good tactician. So let's look at the different categories and break this fight down. So when it comes to speed, I'm going to say this is a. I'm gonna give it to Beterbiev, but I think it's very, very close because Joe Smith Jr. is not that he's slow. It's just that he loads up on his punches sometimes when it's completely unnecessary. But, I take that back. Speed-wise, I'd say it's even. When Joe Smith Jr. is doing the things he's supposed to do, not loading up on punches, they're pretty even in terms of speed. Maybe a slight edge to Beterbiev, but they're pretty even. Power, I'm going to give power slightly to Beterbiev, but they are both very heavy-handed fighters. Both very heavy-handed fighters. When they both hit you, you hear a thud. They have that thudding power. Like, you can think of like a George Foreman or Joe Frazier, but just shrink down the weight down to light heavyweight. They're like they're not battleships, they're pocket battleships. They're pocket battleship versions of the Foremans and the Joe Fraziers and guys like that. They hit really hard. They have flash KO power. So I'll give the power to the Beterbiev, but that's a close one. Footwork. I give footwork to Beterbiev. And you can see the Olympic pedigree stand out when you see him when he's moving around the ring, cutting off angles, changing angles, stepping off the center line, throwing combinations, crossing the guard, taking control in the center line, all these different things. He's a very, very polished fighter. Joe Smith Jr., his footwork, to me, he doesn't have like slow feet, but he doesn't have fantastic feet. I'll put it like that. And to me, that's going to be one of the separating factors in this fight is the footwork, and that goes to Beterbiev. Now we go to boxing IQ. Boxing IQ, this is a good one. I'm going to say slightly to Beterbiev because Joe Smith Jr., again, very underrated boxer, very underrated boxing mind. And I think the fights against guys like Bernard Hopkins and Dimitri Bivol, even in the loss against Bivol, those were critical fights because he seemed like he picked up so many skills, and the mistakes he made in those fights, it seemed like he just learned from them. Even his loss against Sullivan Barrera back in 2017. You're talking about high-level competition, right? For so many years, he fought to try to get those belts. He got the belt. He got the belt against Fonfara, defended it against B-Hop, then he lost it against Barrera, and then he tried to get another belt against Bivol, didn't get it, and then he eventually won his next belt against Maxim Vlasov. But those fights against Bivol and Barrera and Hopkins, you look at how technically sound those guys are, those were lessons that just made him better, like seasoning, sharpening the sword. So even though I give Beterbiev the nod in IQ, I don't think that you're talking about he's better by leaps and bounds. However, that will, again, also play a factor. The footwork and the boxing IQ, that will play a factor. And then in terms of X factor, the X factor for me goes to Beterbiev. Beterbiev being like his stamina. He's just able to keep the same energy and pace all 12 rounds. You talk about a guy with a perfect knockout percentage who doesn't fade at any point in the fight. He's always there. He's always stalking you. He's always applying pressure in a very calm, almost like with a almost assassin-like demeanor. It's a very menacing energy that he brings out of his corner every time the bell dings. And the other corner feels that. The other boxer feels that. So to me, that's the X factor. It's the demeanor along with the stamina, the mindset. So all in all, I have to get the nod to Beterbiev. I think this will be a very good fight. I don't see it going to decision. Somebody is getting stopped in this fight. I think it's going to be Joe Smith Jr. getting stopped in this fight. I think Beterbiev, I think he will have a lot for Beterbiev, but I think that Beterbiev is going to eventually turn the tides on him since, going with the theme into deep waters. That's the theme of the fight. I think that they will both go into deep waters within this fight, but Beterbiev will turn the tides on Joe Smith Jr. and get the stoppage. That's my take on the fight. Let me know what you guys think. That is my breakdown and prediction. And hey, we've had a hell of a lineup of fights this year so far, from January all the way up to June. The Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano fight, Devin Haney, Kambosos Jr. You know, you got this fight coming up now, and a couple others I can't even remember that just happened. Oh, Canelo and Bivol, and so on and so forth. This has been a lit half a year of fights. It's just a blast being able to do these videos. Let me know what you guys think. Leave your comments below, and we'll talk about the results after. And I think one way or another, we're going to have a unified 3-belt champion. And then the last fight, obviously, would be with the winner of this fight going against Dimitri Bivol. So let's get to it, people. Likes, comments, concerns, leave them below, and enjoy your Saturday. Be safe this weekend. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there taking care of your kids. You know, you are much appreciated, and you deserve the love you're getting for the job you're doing. And with that said, we out. Peace.